And then in a video also, they showed Haeckel's drawings. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Get out.
Well, they weren't Haeckel's drawings, but they were drawings of Haeckel's drawings. And so...
Oh, my goodness. Greetings to the brightest audience in the country. This is Real Science Radio. I'm Fred Williams.
And I'm Doug McBurney, science geek Bible student first and amateur comedian. Fred, it is great to be back with you talking about real science on Friday.
So it's that time of year where droves of people are flocking back to the schools. And when I say the schools, mostly the government-funded deep state schools. So this week we have Brian Lauer joining us on Real Science Radio to take us through what he's done to expose the errors in the textbooks in his home state of Minnesota. So I'd like to welcome back to the Real Science Radio airwaves, Mr. Brian Lauer.
It's a pleasure to be back here, Fred. I just love you guys' show. Very inspiring.
Great to see you, Brian. Great to see you. Welcome, welcome. Yes, it's back to school in Minnesota. And so this means it's the end of your very short growing season there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got winter. We have winter and road construction. That's what we have here. And if summer falls on a weekend, how does that go? Yeah, we'll have a picnic if summer falls on a Saturday. So that's what happens.
There you go. Well, it's awesome to have you back, and we've been following your project. I'm honored that I'm on your list of people that you keep updated on your back to school project. We're excited to hear all the details on that. But Fred, everyone is on the edge of their seat. We need to hear the interesting fact of the week.
Okay, so here it is, the interesting fact of the week. So Doug, there is only one letter that doesn't appear in any United States state name. Which letter is that?
Okay, so it'll take me at least 26 seconds to run through.
Let's do it again. One letter.
Okay. I've gone through all the obscure letters in my mind, and they all appear, and so it's got to be one of these really obvious, not obscure letters that I'm going to be surprised when I realize that it doesn't appear in any state, and I would have to say that I'm going to say Aleph. No, Yod. Oh wait, that's Hebrew. Epsilon. No. Oh, Brian, help me out here.
Yeah, do you want to take a crack at it?
I was just going to just Q, but I don't know. Hey, there we go. Yes, I love these.
Q it is. Q it is.
There you go. Q.
The only letter that's not used.
Now that is an obscure letter. So how did that, I don't know how I missed that, Fred, but I'm glad you're here to carry the show today, Brian. We're going to need your help.
So Brian, right. You've got an interesting project with trying to correct errors that are riddled throughout the deep state government textbooks. That, our kids that go to the government schools, I like to say government schools because public schools sounds almost too nice. They're really government schools. So can you take us through that? Brian, what have you discovered?
Yeah, I called them up and asked them if I could look at the textbooks. And it used to be I could check them out and go through them. And then they changed it to you can come in and look at them. So I set up a time and I went in and they showed me the grade school textbooks. And then they said that middle school and high school don't have textbooks, but it's all online. So then they gave me the passcodes so I can look at them. And then I could see the videos that they show the kids, and I saw that there's a video that says that we're 1.6% different from chimpanzees and genetically. And so I found some journals, and, I even used RSR, they're horrendously different, the Y chromosome. I used that article, and then also PubMed from NIH. They say that that's wrong. It's not 1.6. And then I used Tompkins from Answers Research Journal to show that it's more like 30% different. And I sent them all those things and asked them, what are we going to do about it? it'd be nice to have this video taken down because it's inaccurate. And then in a video also, they showed Haeckel's drawings. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Get out.
Well, they weren't Haeckel's drawings, but they were drawings of Haeckel's drawings. And so,
oh my goodness.
yeah, and I couldn't.
Wow.
And I had a booth at the fair, and I was talking to people about this, and they said, well, they should update the textbooks. And I said, this is copyright 2024, and they're still in there. And so, if you want to see the whole, what I did, it shows up on my YouTube channel. It's called CS 108 for Creation Science 108, and it's errors in our textbook. So if you want to see those drawings, and then how I responded to those, because it's been proven wrong 100 years ago, and I showed her some clips of scientists saying that, and also some, I think it was New Scientist. And then they used to go on the comparative anatomy, saying that it's the same bones in our hands are the same bones that's in a whale or a bat and all that. And they say it's a common ancestor, and I say, no, it's a common designer. And then they also had how our eyes are wired backwards because the light has to go through those photoreceptors. And I remember you guys' show on that. And it's it's a really good source of resources, where to go to look for stuff to counteract this evolutionary mindset. And so, but those cells are actually, it's like fiber optics. They funnel the green and the red light to these sources so we can have good day vision and still have good night vision. It's an amazing design. But their video says that it's an engineering nightmare, and that the octopus eye is more logical. Well, yeah, that's because the octopus lives in the water, which filters out the UV light. And then also there was another one too. Oh yeah, life. Water equals life. And so, yeah. And so it's like, well, how do they define life? And it's like, well, water doesn't replicate. It doesn't grow. That's not life. Let's take that video down too. And then they said that they had a video that says all these chemicals sloshing around for millions of years can lead to life. And so I showed them Bob's question to that NASA scientist. The NASA scientist had to admit that water basically is a problem for life because it breaks apart those molecules faster than they can get put together. And that's on your show, rsr.org/NASA-water, I think it is, so they can see that. So I sent all these things into the curriculum director. There's probably 4 or 5 of them. Oh, another one was, they said in the textbook, it says that the oldest rock was found in 2008 by the Hudson Bay, the oldest Earth rock. So I showed them the article that says NASA says it was found on the moon. They released that in 2019. And I said there's a theory that explains how this rock that formed 12 miles underneath the Earth's surface in a water-rich environment got shot up to the moon. There's a theory. Would your science director like to hear about it? And
okay. So wait, now before you can even start getting into theories about how the oldest rock, so just pointing out that they have something that's been updated in 2019. That's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They have information in the textbooks that they should have updated at least 5 years ago. That's just in that case. Forget the Haeckel case, which is like 105 years ago. Yeah. And so
let's go back. For the audience, let's go back to the Haeckel case to make sure people know what we're talking about. So
yeah,
this was a German scientist who came up with these drawings of embryos of different animals. And then he came up with these drawings and said, hey, look, these all look the same in early development. And it's remarkable how fraudulent those pictures are, those drawings. And right now we're showing on the screen what the Haeckel drawings were and what the actual embryos look like. And so you can see the total deception there. And I remember, guys, a while back, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago, I emailed a Harvard professor who had that on his website. And he admitted, well, maybe they're not right, but it gives a correct picture of evolution. And it's like, so he was admitting he wasn't going to take them down. He was going to put a slight disclaimer that this may not be, 100% depict what the embryo looks like. So he was willing to continue to deceive students on something that's long been disproven. It's amazing, Brian, that you still come across things like that.
Right, and you can even hear Eugenie Scott. She was the head of the National Center for Science Education. She said the same thing. She said that the drawings are not reliable, And they're just used because they're free. There's no copyright, and it gives the image that they're trying to portray. And if you need to use fraudulent drawings to project the image you want, maybe the idea is false. And people,
whoa, yeah, or maybe you work for the DNC. I mean,
that was funny too. I was at the fair, and had a booth that says take the errors out of their textbooks, and somebody walks by and says, "Is this a Republican thing?" And I said, "Well, getting accurate information is Republican. Does that mean having accepted information is Democrat?" But you can.
It almost goes without saying now, right?
Yeah.
So,
But
anyway,
you can see that video. It's if you go into the Discovery Institute's YouTube channel and search in Haeckel's bogus drawings, you'll be able to hear Eugenie Scott say that they're not reliable. And in that same video, it's only about 5 minutes long. You got Jonathan Wells showing him and saying this is just not good science. And they're using the mid stage instead of the early stage, because the early stages are even more different than the mids, and the mids are different. And so there's a lot of errors that are being used to prop up this evolutionary theory. And I think if we get rid of the errors, I think that the evolutionary theory will crash down. And I think that's why the resistance is there. Because I finally got a response from the independent school district, and basically she said, I'm working.
Wait, no, wait. I want to go through that. We're not gonna let her off the hook by just having you paraphrase. I have her email up on my big screen, and I want to point out to the audience that Brian has been very gracious and kind and long-suffering in that he has allowed the recipients of his investigation to be told that they've made errors, because that's very nice of you, Brian, to say that they've made errors, because you're being very graceful, because in my humble opinion, these are not errors. But I don't want to go there yet. I don't want to go there yet, because you're the good cop here, and you're doing a good thing. And you sent her a message saying, here are the errors, and you listed a number of them with links, I believe, to their own textbooks. It was obvious to me from your email exchange that you had been on their website reviewing the textbooks that are being used to quote unquote educate children in the deep state schools. And you sent her all these, and then she did respond in a relatively timely manner, I thought. What did you think? She got back to you fairly quickly. I was surprised.
Well, it was a couple of weeks,
Yeah,
I sent 3 of them, and then I didn't hear from her. So then I said, "Hey, do I have your email wrong?" I left an email. I called her up and left a message. "Hey, did I get your email wrong? I haven't heard a response." And then she emailed me back, said, "No, we got your email, and we're working on it." And then I sent her 2 more things that were wrong. And then she,
you just tripled her workload. These are bureaucrats. Well, they don't exactly work with any sense of urgency. So
and so
but Brian kept on her. You kept after her.
Yeah, and it was about this time we had our county fair, and so I had a booth that was pointing this out, and we had some interesting conversations. And then that following week, I did a talk at our public library that showed them, and that's what's up on the YouTube channel. And I invited her and her colleagues to come. I don't know if they were there. I didn't know everybody, but they might have been. I don't know. And then after that, I got the response, and I also don't have access to the textbooks anymore. And so I asked her if I could get another link to the textbooks, and if I could get, because she points to the state standards that they're teaching.
Oh yeah, let me read her very kind, nice response that she gave to you. She said, "Hello, Brian. Thank you for your thoughtful reflections on the Discovery Ed curriculum. I was able to go over them with our secondary education team. Our science curriculum review team chose Discovery Ed because it is a resource bank for teachers to choose from when planning instructional units aligned to the Minnesota state standards. Schools did not intend teachers to use every resource. Our education team, including our science content lead, We'll work alongside teachers this year to ensure all materials used from Discovery Ed with students meet the goals of the Minnesota Science Standards. I did not reach out to Discovery Ed. I just consulted with our 742 education team. Kind regards. So basically, she just talked her way around. She basically implied, tell me if I'm inferring what was not implied. She basically implied that the errors you pointed out may not necessarily be used, Brian. They may not necessarily. We don't insist they use everything.
Well, then they should put an erratus sheet to send it home to the kids saying that this school is not going to teach this false information. And also have it, and if a teacher does teach it, they should be in big trouble because they shouldn't teach errors in the textbooks.
Maybe there should be something like YouTube does if you have a video on, say, like we did a show with Will Duffy on the flat earth and his final experiment to either prove or disprove the flat earth by going to Antarctica, where they claim that you would never have a 24-hour sun. And of course, we know that there's going to be a 24-hour sun and it's going to disprove a flat earth. Well, anyways, YouTube, their ingenious algorithm, they put a note beneath our video about how the flat earth is a disproven myth. I can't remember exactly the disclaimer. They do the same thing if you criticize climate change or anything like that. So they actually didn't realize, we're saying flat earth isn't true. So Brian, I think we just need on these Minnesota these websites have a little disclaimer. Oh, this information you're about to watch is simply not true. But they're not going to do that.
Well, the standards show
we
that
could send them a little clip. We could, here's Harry. Would you put this on your video? We'll send them RSR's special, little tidbit info bite about how this video, by the way, is not true. Don't believe it.
Yes, and you know what? You could let them know, Brian, that we here at Real Science Radio, in order to do our part for our civic responsibility, we're willing to record an errata addendum for all of their videos. Well, at least the ones with errors. Right. I'm sure they have some that say 2 + 2 = 4. I probably have somewhere. So they're not all wrong. But we would be willing to donate that at no charge to the taxpayers.
Well, yeah, that would be great. What gets me is they didn't contact the publisher. There's false information out there, and it would be real simple for them to just delete the video.
Oh, yeah. And so people might not have caught that, but at the end of the delightful, friendly, lovingly warm response, she said, I did not reach out to Discovery Ed. That's the publisher. So she just basically said, I'm not going to contact the company that put the false information in the textbooks that I'm using. I did not contact them. I just worked with our education team, whatever that means. So she throws the responsibility for anything that may or may not occur in the future onto a group of unnamed people and says, oh, by the way, I'm not going to call the publisher.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's as in response to an email, because I hadn't heard from her, and I just emailed it's like, thanks for your concern for the errors that are in our textbooks. What steps have you taken to correct them? And if I was a publisher, I'd be really embarrassed to have this out there, And so,
well, that's if you were a publisher who wasn't purposely, intentionally, deviously, and diabolically abusing the minds of children on purpose. See, that would make you different than, who is this publisher? I want him to sue me. Discovery Ed. Please take me to court because I said you're a diabolical bunch of maniacs abusing children. Please sue me, Discovery Ed. Yes.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love it. I would love it. I would revel in it.
Because then all this...
Can you imagine, Brian, if we had the opportunity to lay out the errors, I put that in air quotes, in an open court that these people have put in the textbooks in front of the school children? Can you imagine the opportunity that would be?
Sure. And I went through, I asked her to send me another link to the textbooks and links to the state standards, and she has not replied in a week. So maybe she's sick. I don't know. That could be. That's my next email. I hope you're okay. I'm just concerned.
There you go.
But
yes.
And so I looked at the standards, and they do have, the embryology in there. That's the standard that they teach to. The embryos all look the same, and also comparative analogy or comparative anatomy points to a common ancestor, and all the fossil record shows the change of life, even though, who was it, Stephen Gould, he said that, there's no transitional fossils. That's the trade secret of paleontology. And it just goes on and on. And so the standards are...
And we had Sal... And when we had Sal Cordova on, there's no common ancestor to the protein families. None. Are kids being taught that? Because you get underneath the hood, and that alone refutes evolution. So I'd encourage people to go back and watch that show with Sal Cordova on there's no common ancestors. There's no ancestors of the protein families. And we used a short, and we based it off a clip from A Few Good Men. So anyways, Brian, I did want to go back.
Wait. Speaking of people who can't handle the truth, I want to speak to the parents of Minnesota because we have the evidence right in front of us. But what Brian just said was that the standards in the school, they almost demand that the publishers include false information. If you want a book that teaches to the standards, you have to teach to the errors in the standards. Please sue me. Internet, what is it? ISD, where is this lady from? Independent School District 742. Please sue me. You're a bunch of diabolical child abusers teaching children lies. Sue me, please. I would love to challenge your standards in open court. Unbelievable. And you pointed it out because you had access not only to the textbooks, you had access to the standards that these publishers are being asked to meet.
Well, yeah, the state standards is what the school is teaching, and you can find that on Minnesota's. What did I search? I have a link. It's like Minnesota State Science Standards, and they updated them in 2019. And so I looked through them, and it's like, well, but in there's no standard that says that we're 1.6% different from chimpanzees. So that video clearly should be able to be taken down.
Okay, but let's get to the bigger issue of these standards. So, did you have to contact deep state bureaucrats and get a secret code to look at the state education standards, Brian?
No, I just searched Minnesota State Science Standards, and a page popped up, and there was a link where I could click, and then it downloaded onto my page. I sent a few of those to you in an email earlier today, so you can take a look at some of them. And there's a lot of general things, but way to the right, there's some specific ideas that they're teaching to. And I would question some of those ideas because it's a belief system of the past that's wrong. It's a blind chance perspective of the past. That's Big Bang and evolution. That's like thinking this building got put together by chance. It's absurd. How much more absurd is it to think that our bodies got put together by chance? And if kids only see one perspective of the past, they just memorize. They don't think. They get memorize and conform. They need to see another perspective of the past so then they can compare and contrast. They can think critically and they can see which one actually makes the most sense. And I think if enough people see the creation model, then the Big Bang gets thrown on the scrap heap of history where it belongs, along with the geocentric model and spontaneous generation. Because they were propping those up with errors for a long time too. They always had those, what were they, epicycles that tried to explain how the planets were going backwards in the sky, and then it just kind of fell apart with all that, all those things they had to add. And that's the same thing with the Big Bang. They got to add dark matter and dark energy and inflation and string theory and all these things just to keep it from falling apart. And I think, let it fall apart. And I like what Walt Brown said. He says, you get a scientific revolution, the people in charge don't want it to change because they got the power. But if you get a vast number of people to realize we've been misled, then it's going to crumble. And then science can advance. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is get a lot of people to look at their textbooks and say, hey, we're not 1.6% different from chimps. We don't look like chickens in the embryo. Life cannot start from water. And just go through and start bringing these things up and just make it be a grassroots effort. Enough people realize that, hey, we're being misled by our government education. Then they lose their power by default because nobody will believe them.
Hey, and that's why we have you on Real Science Radio. You're doing the legwork, and then we get this information out. We request to be sued. We can get this in front of a bunch of people in a court of law.
Amen.
And, we're just trying to get this truth out there because, like Doug said, all these people are being deceived in the public schools. And I know the public schools are, and again, I'd rather say the government or the deep state schools, they have an agenda. They're politically bent in one direction. You know, the Communist Manifesto, one of their main planks of their tenets is, free public education, free government education, so that they can brainwash you. So Brian, I wanted to go back to, you mentioned the Earth rock. The oldest Earth rock was actually found on the moon by NASA, by Alan Shepard. And so what's an Earth rock doing on the moon? Because there could be that means there's a whole bunch of Earth rocks on the moon, and it very much fits the hydroplate theory that this rock came from Earth, that in fact it is an Earth rock. It originated from the flood and the fountains of the Great Deep. But Brian, have you seen this short that this Astro Alexandria put out on YouTube? I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
Okay, I got to show it to you, and I want to show it to you now because you haven't seen it. I want to get your reaction because you're obviously as familiar with the hydroplate theory as anybody. You've given a lot of talks on it, and you do a great job of explaining it. So let me know what you think.
This is the most insane space news in a really long time. This asteroid, called Bennu, is 63 million kilometers away. That's 160 times farther than the moon is. Over the last few years, this spacecraft called OSIRIS-REx traveled all the way there, touched its surface, grabbed a sample, and brought it all the way back to Earth. And what they found in that sample is insane. It's rich in carbon, nitrogen, and organic compounds, all of which are essential to life as we know it, but we've seen that before. The asteroid is also covered in a mineral called serpentine, which looks like this. And these samples look just like the type of rock that we find here in mid-ocean ridges. This is where the stuff from the mantle of the Earth comes up and touches the water. It's underwater. Scientists think that this asteroid could be a chunk of an ancient small ocean world. This could be a piece of an old watery planet that's been traveling through space for billions of years, and we just took a sample of it.
Wow.
What do you think of that?
Wow. Oh my goodness. Boy, does that show the hydroplate, the mid-oceanic ridge where all the water shot up?
Oh yeah.
A water-rich planet?
She's got a...
Man, she needs a raise from all around.
We have a few minor tweaks for her. You know, first of all, that watery planet, let's call it Earth, as Kevin Lee likes to say. And then the fountains of the Great Deep. Make sure you show the crust breaking up above the ocean water. Because unlike catastrophic plate tectonics, hydroplate theory actually works with the physics. It was a crack that was on the surface of the Earth because something exploding beneath the surface of the Earth isn't going to shoot, material up into space. So I wanted to get your reaction, Brian, because when I saw that, I'm like, wow. She works for Walt Brown and Real Science Radio in creating a short for us without us having to do all that production effort.
Yeah, she needs a raise, I think. Man.
Well, and so it's odd that you decide to play that video, Fred, just extemporaneously there off the top of your head, because what you just saw, what everyone just saw on display was an example of a victim of the government schools, a victim of the deceptions and the errors that Brian has uncovered. That girl, to not even consider that this giant water planet is Earth, but that it's been traveling through space for millions of years, is because she has been victimized by exactly what Brian's been uncovering. And it's actually sad. It's sad to see. But it is instructive as to the work we have to do. Now, before we go on, Brian, I want to get back to the fact that these deep state school standards that are designed to brainwash, confuse, and mislead children by design, they're not a secret. You access them on a Google search. So I remember back when the COVID hit, and all these parents were absolutely shocked when what their children were being fed was piped into their house via Zoom. All of a sudden, the parents said, "We had no idea what was going on." So you are without excuse. All of you parents out there, you're without excuse. Don't tell me you had no idea what was going on. If you had no idea what was going on, you definitely need to check yourself, because you are a bad parent. You are a bad parent. You need help. They should probably go to your website, Brian, Is it Solidify Your Faith? Is that your website? How can people reach you?
Well, it's on YouTube if they want to see the errors talk. It's on YouTube. That's Solidify Your Faith. And see, my best, you can reach me at solidifyyourfaith@hotmail.com. And I've got a free website called solidifyyourfaith.weebly.com. That's WEEBLY.com. And my brother asked, well, what does Weebly mean? And I said, it means I'm cheap. You know, the less money I have to give to the less money I give to the websites. Yeah. And so on that one, you'll be able to see, I've got a Rumble channel too, where I've been censored on YouTube, so you'll get links to that. So basically, I just want people to get all the information so they can make informed decisions. And that's not happening in our government schools, and it's not happening in a lot of different areas. And we just need to get the information, and the truth doesn't mind questions, but lies hates questions. And so we just need to point. We just need to get more information out there. I think more information is better than less information.
Yes. Well, let me talk to you about that for a second, because so by the way, anyone who's offended by anything I've said, if you want to reach me, please reach out to me, and then I can point you to Brian if you think maybe he can help you. But first of all, I want to indemnify and hold harmless Real Science Radio, Fred Williams, Brian Lauer, unequivocally released from all responsibility for anything I've said regarding any litigation. I also want to hold harmless any affiliates and assignees, associates, employees, children, grandchildren, anyone they may have met or may ever meet. Hold them harmless from any expenses arising from any claims resulting from anything that I've said on the air today. That's so if they do sue me, guys, that it's just me. I'm just a loose cannon out here. You just tell them that the guy was out of control. So here's the thing about all the information. So we don't need all the information. We don't need lies. Lies should not be a part of the information. We don't need to put lies up next to the truth, because lies deserve equal time. Lies do not deserve equal time. And by the way, the lies that you've pointed out, Brian, it's not just you, a Christian conservative, pointing out that these errors have been refuted. It's their own side has proven on many occasions for a number of these errors. It's the communist, leftist, godless heathens who've said, okay, we were wrong about that. So it's not just us, and so those lies should be removed, and we don't need to be putting lies in front of children. That's child abuse. Lying to children is child abuse, and you should be arrested for it, frankly. So I think the people who put and I want to say one other thing about the government schools. Just removing the lies from these particular textbooks in Minnesota it's a worthy cause. I think it's a great way, Brian, to call attention of parents to what's going on, because I think a lot of them aren't paying attention. So I laud you for that. But cleaning up the government schools in any respect I don't think that should be our goal. Our goal should be to remind parents that God said, train up a child in the way he should go. Bring up your children in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, which by definition means you cannot send them to an institution that is officially godless. They are officially declared enemies of Jesus Christ. They're enemies of the gospel, self-proclaimed enemies of the gospel. So to send your children to the government schools is a sin. How do we know it's a sin? Well, Brian Lauer has uncovered two dozen examples of how you should know it's a sin. And so I just want to point that out, and I want to let people know that we're not about cleaning up the government schools. We're about Brian Lauer going in there and shining the light of the truth on lies and deception. And we appreciate it, Brian.
Yeah, and as a taxpayer, I think I'm very offended that they're using my money to teach kids that they're mutated animals. And then when kids act like an animal and shoot up the place, they want to take away our guns. And I always ask, well, hey, what was that kid taught in school? Was he taught that there's no God? Was he taught that we're just animals? If we're just animals, what's wrong with that? And so we need to get a little more focused, a little more organized and just start calling the school. And it's like, as taxpayers, I don't want to be paying for that. And there's errors in there that are clearly errors. They should be removed. And if there's teachers that are teaching this and they're causing these little ones to stumble, Jesus said it'd be better if a millstone were hung around their neck and they'd be cast to the depths of the sea. And so,
preach it, brother. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
And so
they need to hear that. They need to be afraid of Jesus Christ. Forget the taxpayers. Forget me. Forget you. They're going to face God over this.
Right. And I did talk to one of the assistants at the school district, and I told her about Haeckel's drawings, and she said, I'm upset because I've got kids who go here. I don't want them being taught errors. And so, and so hopefully she'll be an advocate trying to get them out of there. And I think if more people inside the system knew what was going on, I think they'd have a harder time teaching it. And, and it's got far-reaching consequences because Ken Ham, he wrote this book, Already Gone, talking about why kids, 2/3 of our kids, church kids, stop going to church when they leave home. And he asked them why, and it was basically because they doubt the Bible. And they asked them when you start to doubt it, and it was middle school and high school when they get this Big Bang and evolution thought ran down their throat. And so if there are kids in the school system, they should start asking questions like, how did life begin? Where did matter come from? Because the teacher can't answer that. Nobody can answer that without God. And that helps the whole class realize this thing isn't just, this isn't as settled as they say it is. And hopefully they don't swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And so I think there's a big battle, truth versus error. And I think that it would be surprising to see that, well, I shouldn't say, it'll be revealing to see if the school system does not want to get errors out of the textbooks. And that's
okay, Brian. Well, I can tell you right now, Brian. You don't have to wait. They don't, and they won't.
And that's going to be.
I guarantee you that.
Yeah, that's going to be.
They don't, and they won't. And before you task your child with standing up in class and challenging the teacher on matter, first get your kid out of the government schools. Children are not to be the leading edge in the culture war. That's parents' jobs. Get your kid out. Get your children out. You go down to the school, you challenge the teacher, you challenge the principal to their face about the lies that they're teaching the kids. But your children are your delicate responsibility. By the way, the Bible says that the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. That means that all the children who are going into the government schools, they are predisposed to wickedness. They're predisposed already to becoming evil. And so to send them into an institution that is going to proactively teach them to be evil when it's your responsibility to teach them good and, by the way, to shield them from evil. When I was raising my young children, I did not want them to hear the evil. I did not want the filth and the pollution of wicked, evil society to even get into their heads. It was I put up a hedge around my children. That's what a parent's job is. So because our children, like us, have a tendency towards sin, to send them into an institution like that is sinful and it's evil. And just get your kids out. Flee the government schools. Get out so that you won't be held accountable to God for sinning against Him and against your child. And I guess I just wanted to make that clear that that's the official position of, well, just me, especially if you're taking me to court. I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah, you're speaking for Real Science Radio too. And I'd encourage the listener and you watching us on YouTube. Some of our most popular shows this last year was when Doug and I visited the homeschool conference that was held in Fort Worth, Texas. And it was really interesting because there's an art show going on at the same time. So we took advantage of that situation and asked people at the art fair 4 or 5 questions. And we asked the same exact questions to the homeschool students. And if you watch that video, you'll get a compare and contrast of just how different the answers are and how one view is built on a certain secular worldview, and then the homeschools kids are built on a biblical worldview. And if you oppose wokeness, which a lot of people do, you'll see how many woke answers you get from the people who go to public schools, the people that were at the art fair, and then you compare the answers to the kids at the homeschool. They're dramatic, they're drastically different. It was real eye-opening, and I hope it is for you. That just watch that, because we encourage parents, get your kids out of the public schools and ideally homeschool them. And if you're going to send them to a Christian private school, please do a lot of your homework on that particular school, because they're not all, what they're cut out to be. So, Brian, I'd like to, again, thank you for this work that you're doing with in your state of Minnesota. And Amen. We need to continue the good fight and just, get the truth out there so that people can hear this stuff. Astro Alexandra, you've been invited on the show. We'd love to have you. We realize that we have different foundations of our worldview, what lead us to arrive at certain conclusions. But when we're not exposed to the truth, or at least, we can't make informed decisions because we're not hearing the truth. We're hearing something that's made up and we don't even know it. I know I was mad that I got brainwashed for 30 years before I, started seeing it. I never saw the other side of the evidence. I was never told that there's evidence against millions of years and all the evidence against evolution and so on and so forth. So again, Brian, we applaud your effort and we thank you so much again for coming on Real Science Radio. It's always great to have you. You're one of those really vigilant warriors we have out fighting on the streets. You're really taking it to the public, and we really greatly appreciate that. And we hope people support Brian's ministry. We're showing that link on the YouTube, and we'll also provide it in the show summary on our website for those who are listening on the radio here in Denver and adjacent states, and on the various podcasts around the globe. We know we've got a lot of listeners that tune in through iTunes or Spotify and whatnot. So again, great to have you on the show, Brian, and thank you so much for all your efforts.
Well, thank you so much for getting the message out there. It's I think Pastor Kevin Lee did this to his school board and they didn't do anything. This was years ago. And but I think now with social media and with broadcasts like yours, I think it can reach more people. And I think it's going to be a PR nightmare if they don't get the errors out of the textbooks. And if they, it's going to be hard for them to get funding. People aren't going to want to pay for indoctrination instead of education. So again, thank you guys for what you do. And there's going to be a hydroplate conference and catastrophic plate tectonics roundtable in September, and that's going to be the Greater Houston Creation Association. So that's ghcaonline.com, where people can get Zoom links for that, I believe. And again, we need just to have more conversation because that's what we need.
Okay. And Brian, we'll show that link also on the YouTube channel and on the show summary. So if people want to go, hear the arguments for the different flood models, it's an interesting topic. And of course, we take the side of hydroplate theory. We think it's, much more viable. In fact, here at Real Science Radio, we're not afraid to say we think the chances of catastrophic plate tectonics being true is virtually zero.
And what do you think the chances of their science director wanting to hear that theory that makes accurate predictions are going to be? Do you think they're going to get back to me?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You would think they'd want to hear a theory that makes accurate predictions, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You would, right? If you're into science, exactly. You'd love to hear a theory like that. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how much they're into science.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thanks again, Brian. So, for my co-host Doug McBurney and Brian Lauer of Solidify Your Faith, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.